Now we'll zoom into the Ahmadi community, the Ahmadi Muslim community. So I'll introduce Amjad Khan, who is, yes, here as a guest speaker. And let me just mention what he's doing. He currently serves as the National Secretary for Public Affairs of Ahmadiyya Muslim Community in the US and President of Ahmadiyya Muslim Lawyers Association in the US. And additionally, Mr. Khan is also co-founder of Global Lawyers for Refugees and is on the board of the Humanity First USA. And today, he's specifically speaking regarding the persecution of Ahmadi Muslims in Algeria. Mr. Khan, to you the floor.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me well. It is really an honor and privilege to be here in this side event connected to a very important ministerial that's happening just a little ways away. I wanted to thank the Jubilee Campaign and all of the sponsoring organizations of this very important program. I am privileged to be here to speak about an issue that perhaps may be less known, but incredibly important to not just the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, but for all communities in Algeria and beyond Algeria as well. At the outset, I have to say, I teach and practice law in Los Angeles at UCLA, and I am Muslim. I'm an Ahmadi Muslim, and in hearing the testimony that I just heard, it deeply pains me as a Muslim to know that in the name of Islam, there would be such intolerance being committed. It is completely against the teachings of Islam, completely against the teachings of Islam to not allow the full and free exercise of religion and belief for all communities, and particularly the Christian community, whom the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, welcomed, who wrote a charter of privileges for Christians, that in the name of Islam, there would be such intolerance being committed. It is completely ghastly. It must be decried by all Muslims in the world. And I will say very categorically that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community condemns this persecution against the Christian community, and we stand in complete solidarity with all persecuted Christians, including those who are represented today. I say that because it's very important we don't forget the bigger picture, that all people of faith, especially these great Abrahamic faiths, must recognize the importance of not just freedom of religion for Christians, but I will go so far as to say the protection of our Christian brothers and sisters. And as a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and as someone who knows very well the teachings of the founder of our community, it's very critical that we must protect Christian churches wherever they are. This is actually a commandment by God in the Quran, to protect churches. And so for churches to be sealed in a Muslim country is shocking, and it should never happen in any Muslim country. With respect to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the community has had a presence in Algeria since the 1920s, in fact. And really this persecution that the community is enduring is a new phenomenon just in the past several years. I should say at the outset that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community professes to be Muslim, but in some parts of the Muslim world are declared to be non-Muslim. In Pakistan, the constitution of the country declares the entire community to be non-Muslim, and that's a punishable offense if we claim to be Muslim. In Algeria, we had enjoyed religious freedom for a long time. When there came a point when 2,000 Ahmadis had, the congregation had grown to 2,000 Algerian Ahmadis, the Ahmadiyya community in Bouleda decided to apply for a registration to have a mosque. And this was the precipitating event that led to the state very aggressively reacting to that rather perfunctory act that we felt. And immediately that permit was denied. And in fact, worse than that, the building that was secured by the Ahmadiyya community was destroyed by the state. This happened in February of 2016. And then thereafter, Ahmadis sought to be registered as an organization. Now, it is really interesting for a community that believes to be Muslim to want to seek to register a mosque. But unfortunately, Algeria does not recognize the great diversity in Islam, the great diversity among Muslims. And there are more than 72 different sects of Islam. Ahmadis doctrinally follow the Hanafi school. It's ironic that Ahmadis are quite orthodox as Muslim, observing all the Muslim practices and Islamic practices, yet nevertheless are viewed as deviant, as outside the pale of Islam. So this was the event that led to the Minister of Interior very much not just rejecting the application, but then going on specific pronouncements saying that the Ahmadis can never enjoy religious freedom in their country. In fact, for the interest of time, I'll just mention one statement which is a microcosm of how the state is reacting to Ahmadis. In October of 2016, the Religious Affairs Minister referred to the Ahmadis trying to just get a mosque of their own for their 2000 as, quote, deliberate sectarian invasion of the country, deviation from Islam. And then in that same year, then the chief of the cabinet to the president of the country said that in the matter of Ahmadis, quote, there are no human rights or freedom of religion, and he called on all Algerians to protect the country from Shia and Ahmadiyya sects. So these were public statements. These were not private overtures. These were things that were covered, well covered. And of course, we know that this stands against Algerians' legal commitments. One of the rare, I would say, as someone who studied the constitutions of Muslim countries, it's very rare for a Muslim country to have acceded to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the most important human rights covenant in the world. And Algeria has acceded to it, in fact, signaling their intent that they want to be different from other Muslim countries that persecute, yet completely in contradiction of their international legal obligations, not just destroying houses of worship for the Protestants and other Christian denominations, but also not even allowing a mosque to be built for the Ahmadiyya community. I'll say here as well that in summary, what has happened for the Ahmadiyya community is not just that registration and not just the inability to build a mosque, but actually there has been legal prosecution. And this is really disturbing. 292 Ahmadis have been prosecuted over the past several years. The Supreme Court has before it or has already decided 280 cases against Ahmadis since 2016. 26 Ahmadis have been jailed. The jail sentences are from 2 to 7 months. There is an Ahmadi that's currently in jail in Adrar. There was one that was released last year. And what is happening is a cycle of intimidation, which leads to prosecution, maybe release, and then re-arresting and destroying the lives of mothers and children, ripping families apart. I have spoken to these Ahmadis myself. I have spent time speaking to Ahmadi women who do not know when their spouses will return home, will not know when the next Ahmadi will be arrested, their children who are crying, not knowing when their fathers will be returned, mothers being prosecuted, women, Ahmadi women being prosecuted. We have here an Ahmadi Algerian, Kamal, who's in solidarity with this event here. And he specifically came because of the pain that he's expressing on behalf of Algerians, Ahmadi Algerians. The nature of the offenses is important to note. And in the interest of time, I'll just very briefly summarize that Ahmadis are facing the kind of prosecution that deals with offenses that are really surprising. You know, this idea of not being able to associate, to commit blasphemy, possession of documents, you know, these are offenses like if an Ahmadi possesses a Quran, that's an offense. If an Ahmadi recites the Quran, that's an offense. If they're exchanging documents over WhatsApp, those could be offenses. The triviality of these offenses is very disturbing. And the use of law has been weaponized in Algeria. In the interest of time, I will just say that this spans all major cities in Algeria. Tizi-Ouzou, we've had many Ahmadis who've been prosecuted. Constantine, I mentioned about Bouleda, in Kenchala and Batna. There's so many places where Ahmadis are being prosecuted. In conclusion here, I will say the following. As someone who really believes in the rule of law, it's very important that Algeria recognizes its commitment to its own constitution, which protects freedom of religion. We are not asking for any special favors for any community who is not Muslim or is a minority in Algeria. We're asking for justice based on their own constitution. These are not special favors of the government. These are cherished rights that everyone must enjoy. And this December 2020 change in the Constitution, as was mentioned earlier, is disturbing because it does not recognize the ability for freedom of association for all communities. It only recognizes it for some. I will say here the real irony and tragedy that I personally, as an Ahmadi, must convey here in the end is I think we're almost on the anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, of the 60th anniversary of Algeria being admitted to the United Nations. I believe that was on October 9th, 1962. And that was a very historic day for Algeria, with the green and white flag being raised in the UN. Perhaps some, even in Algeria, may not know that the person who raised that flag was an Ahmadi Muslim. He was the president of the United Nations at the time, General Assembly, Sir Zafrullah Khan, an Ahmadi who fought for the independence of Algeria as a nation, who was heralded as someone who was a major supporter of the country, and he's an Ahmadi. And now, so many decades later, Ahmadis are in jail presently when their own people have fought so hard and loved so much their country. We cannot stand for this in 2022. We as a religious community must decry this and restore Algeria to the freedom of religion that is necessary for it to shine and to restore its luster, which was the birth of its presence at the UN, and make sure they abide by those commitments of the ICCPR. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, for this impressive and emotional view on the Ahmadis and how they're treated. I didn't know that it was so bad, as you described, where there are 292 people are convicted and in prison because of their faith. So it's good you stress this problematic situation of the Ahmadi in Algeria.